Discapacidad Televisión.
¡Hola mundo!
Primer canal de televisión dedicado al colectivo de personas con discapacidad desde 2006.
Hola, soy el doctor Carlos Ferreira, abogado y locutor. Junto con Alexi Cañuzca y Coti Garrone hacemos Sin Barreras, un programa que intenta ser un granito de arena para aportar a la inclusión y la accesibilidad. Desde el Centro de Discapacitados de La Matanza, CEDIMA, en San Justo, Partido de La Matanza, República Argentina, llevamos toda la información, análisis y opinión de la problemática de las personas con discapacidad. Los esperamos.
¿Ves esta plaza? Es amplia, está en buen sitio. ¿Vas a ocuparla?
Yo la necesito.
Cuando la usas para no llegar tarde al trabajo.
Me impides llegar al mío.
Cuando la usas para recoger a un amigo.
No dejas que me recojan a mí.
Cuando la usas para no dar 20 vueltas.
Haces que yo dé 1000.
Tu comodidad.
Por mi movilidad.
Ponte en su lugar, no en su sitio. Junta de Andalucía.
Juli.
Sí.
¿Me dices un segundo, por favor? ¿Cómo va todo?
Todo bien.
¿Bien?
Bien.
Genial, me alegro. Bueno, hoy se va a estar sumando un chico nuevo al equipo.
Bien.
Así que quiero que lo ayudemos, viste que el primer día no es fácil para nadie.
No.
Vos vas a ser el encargado de explicarle cómo funcionan las cosas.
Bien.
Tengámosle paciencia, viste que la adaptación no es fácil.
No, claro, obvio.
Si hay que explicarle las cosas 2 veces.
Se las explicamos 2 veces.
Sí, si hay que explicárselas 3 veces.
3 veces.
3 veces, perfecto. Mira, justo ahí viene.
Hola.
Hola. Mati, él es Juli.
Hola.
Juli va a ser el encargado de presentarte a los chicos del equipo y mostrarte cómo funciona todo por acá. Así que bueno, si quieren ir yendo.
Vamos, te muestro todo.
Juli. Vámonos a sentir una más, ¿dale?
Sí. Freidora.
Y esta es la tostadora.
Bien, exacto. Bueno, en ese vasito, poné la bebida.
¿La bebida?
Ah, sí, sí. ¿Saben cuál es vainilla? No importa, tranquilo.
Bienvenidos a Cambiando el Mundo de Personas con Discapacidad.
Cambiaremos el mundo teniendo igualdad.
Mi nombre es Raquel Quesada y seré la presentadora del mismo. En el programa hablaremos de la no discriminación, la participación e inclusión plenas y efectiva en la sociedad, a la igualdad de oportunidades de los derechos y a la accesibilidad de las personas con discapacidad, el respeto a la evolución de las facultades de los niños y las niñas con discapacidad y sus derechos a preservar su dignidad, la inclusión, la sensibilidad, la educación, la diversidad. En este programa todos los sábados celebraremos la vida de las personas con discapacidad. Que juntos podemos cambiar el mundo de personas con discapacidad.
Discapacidad Televisión.
¡Hola, mundo!
Primer canal de televisión dedicado al colectivo de personas con discapacidad desde 2006. A continuación, Footless Yo, más allá de una amputación. Presenta Yo Bequis. Audio en inglés, subtítulos en castellano.
And I've all been asking one question. What the heck happened here? Where did it go? Who took it? Why did this occur? How did I lose my leg? This is, of course, one of the most common questions I get asked. And when it initially occurred, I made a video telling the story. I became an amputee about a month and a half ago. But there is so much more that has occurred since then, including losing my leg a second time that I'm gonna share with you guys today. And it's probably not the story you expect when it comes to losing a leg. With that being said, I wanna give a huge thank you to our amazing sponsor, Ana Luisa Jewelry. I am wearing them quite honestly all the time. You can ask any of my friends in real life. I am constantly wearing their super cute little safety pin earrings or stacking their jewelry. Something I really like doing is stacking their pieces together, whether it's necklaces and earrings and maybe a bracelet, changing up the style and using different pieces to kind of accent each other depending on how I'm feeling that day. The thing that I really love about Ana Luisa, aside from really liking their designs, is that they are a carbon neutral company. They are all about sustainability, which is something I want to be supporting, and additionally, their pieces are not something that are going to break the bank. These make amazing presents as we have the holidays coming up. This is something that I'm investing in this holiday season for friends and family. And fantastically, right now they are running their biggest sale of the year, which is buy one get one 60% off. So this is an awesome time if there are people in your life who like jewelry, who like, you know, feeling pretty or fancy or a little sparkly. Now is the time to click that link in the description and check out their website. In case it wasn't clear, I genuinely love this company. Also, they got me into gold jewelry. I didn't think I was like a gold person for a long time, like the color gold, right? I always wore silver, and then I started trying some of their stuff and I was like, oh, I feel classy and fancy and I like this. So I hope you check it out. If you use that link in the description, not only does it help to support this channel, but also Ana Luisa is a fantastic company that I feel great supporting. So thank you, Ana Luisa, for supporting this video, and let's dive into it. The story, the leg loss story. So jokingly, I like to tell people a lot of different versions of how I lost my leg. You know, gator got her, the champagne of sharks, a great white shark attack. I always wonder if saying that is like insensitive to people who have lost their limbs to sharks, which I imagine is an incredibly traumatic experience, and maybe I should stop joking about that. The way my story starts is a little bit less exciting. I was a horse girl as a kid growing up. Like when you think stereotypical horse girl, that was me. I was kind of obsessed. I was homeschooled, I lived in the forest, and eventually I convinced my mom to let me go work at a local barn. So I'd basically, you know, take care of the horses in exchange for occasionally being able to get on one of them in the arena and, you know, take her around or something like that. But we never had the money for actual lessons, so I just kind of picked up hints here and there and like tips from sometimes instructors who were there who were kind enough to share their wisdom with me, or just other gals who were training there. So as a 13-year-old, I was pretty adept at like walking, trotting, cantering, getting around arena, but oh my god, the vision I had of me being able to gallop through an open field, my ponytail streaming in the breeze behind me, looking elegant and majestic like Éowyn in Lord of the Rings, was everything my little teenage heart desired. And one day that opportunity actually became available to me. A couple of the cool girls at the barn were gonna take their horses out for a trail ride in this huge open field, and I got to tag along. I woke up that morning ready for my dream to come true. And technically it did, but then it took an abrupt left turn. Oh, hi Sophie. Sophie's gonna be joining us. So the horse that I was riding that day was named Georgia, and she was an ex-thoroughbred racing horse, which in retrospect, maybe not the smartest to take this horse out in an open field where she could just take off. That, my dear Sophie, is precisely what she did. So my two friends who were very skilled riders took off galloping on their horses. Georgia, you know, charges after them because that's what horses do. But I was totally out of control. I did not know what I was doing, and I was kind of holding on for dear life. And unfortunately, Georgia actually tripped as she was running kind of full speed. I went over her shoulder. I remember hitting the ground, like on the back of my shoulders, almost on my neck, and then I blacked out for like a couple seconds. When I came to, my friends had like run over. They're like, oh my god, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. And I went to stand up, and then I almost passed out again. and quickly realized there was something very, very wrong with my right ankle. Because we had been riding for a little bit, we were not close to any roads or civilization. Georgia had run off, her legs were fine, like she didn't break her leg or anything like that. But eventually about an hour later, they got a golf cart out to me, and by that point I was in substantial pain with my ankle. My mom came, picked me up, we went to the emergency room. They actually told me that they had no room for me and that I should come back a few hours later, and so we're like, okay. By the time we had almost gotten home, the amount of pain I was in was way too high, so we went back, got things checked out, and it turned out that the bottom of my tibia, which is the big bone in your leg here, had broken off like a chunk and then been shoved up an inch into my leg. This was the kind of x-ray that other doctors were being called in to see, not because it was like a super complicated thing, not because they wanted a second opinion, just because the doctors were like, dude, this is cool, look at this, we've not seen this before. Just a word to the wise, you never want to impress doctors with your scan results, like ever. So it was a significant injury, and I ended up in surgery a few days later to repair things. 2 months after that surgery, it turned out the bones hadn't healed, so they literally had to break my ankle again in surgery, put things back together, and we should have been good to go from there. But unfortunately that was not the case, and it led to years and years of surgeries trying to save my ankle, trying to put it back together. I had to have an ankle fusion at one point, which is basically where they cut out the ankle joint and they screw your foot to your leg. So like I had a lot of reduced movement, but I could still walk, I could still do things. That's supposed to last like 10 to 15 years. And honestly, it did last about 10, but during those 10 years, all throughout high school, all throughout college, I was in increasingly larger amounts of pain. The activities I could do were like slowly being taken away as I was less mobile and in more pain. I was always going in for like, here's my bi-yearly ankle surgery, okay, let's get that done, or another injection or another procedure. That cycle went on for 14 years. Surgeries, injections, you know, experimental things, and just honestly, at the end of the day, nothing worked. Some things bought me a little bit more time, but by the time I was 27, I could barely walk, I was in a ton of pain, days were really unpredictable, all of the activities I loved doing were either obscenely painful, so I'd like push through and do them, or just couldn't anymore. Like I couldn't take my dogs for a walk around the block, and I was really unhappy, and there wasn't a light at the end of the tunnel. Like there wasn't hope that this could get better. I remember specifically the last ankle surgery that I had was in March of 2018. And after that surgery, which they were like hopeful could do some things, but it didn't really seem to work, I like met with a surgeon again and was like, okay, so this didn't work, what are next steps? And he was kind of like, well, there aren't any. And I think that was the first time that I really began to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't gonna be able to keep my leg. Like doctors had told me throughout the years that when you're 60 or 70, you're gonna have a leg amputation because, you know, things are gonna progress and get worse and worse. But I wasn't really prepared for it before I was 30. But knowing that there was no hope of this getting better, I began very seriously considering the only good option that I had left, which was to literally cut a limb off. And when I say that they don't make a handbook for that kind of a decision, dear God, it is a really difficult one to make. It took months of talking to surgeons and therapists and family members and friends and getting different opinions and like soul searching. But pretty quickly I knew that that's what I wanted to do, because I did not have a hope at life without pain or an ability to walk if I kept my ankle, but at least I had a chance if we chopped this body part off. And so long story short, in October of 2018, I walked into a hospital and 4 days later was wheeled out without my leg. One of the hardest things about making some kind of decision like this is you have no idea what's waiting for you on the other side. And so it was really a leap of faith for me. And I had been told that, you know, if things went smoothly, which I was a perfect candidate for them to go smoothly, I didn't have other existing complicating health issues, right? Like it wasn't a traumatic injury, we could plan it, we could prepare for it. I should be able to get a prosthetic leg in like 6 to 8 weeks, which seemed way too fast. Like think about that, you lose a body part and just a handful of weeks later you're gonna be up walking around. But in the grand scheme of things, it seemed like the recovery process was manageable. And so I moved towards that and I had my prosthetics appointment, and 2 days before my first prosthetic fitting, I had a really bad fall in a restaurant that was caused by negligence. Unfortunately, fell directly on my amputated limb, like on the stump. It was incredibly painful, and it felt like something was wrong. I spoke with my doctor, and I was cleared to go ahead and get that fitting done. So I had my first prosthetic leg, and it's a long process of learning how to walk and adjusting to it and everything, right? And everyone says it shouldn't be painful, it's gonna be uncomfortable. But this was so painful all the time in like the first 2 weeks that I had it. I could not stand it being on me. And so by Christmas, I wasn't really using it at all. And eventually they found out that there was stuff going on because of the fall. Bursa had developed underneath my skin, which is kind of like an internal callus that ended up being very painful. Another one developed because of the fall as well. So I had surgery to fix that. So March of 2019, they went in, removed those things, you know, cleaned things up, should be good to go. Went back in for prosthetic fitting a number of weeks later, and same thing. It just felt awful, and I felt dumb going back to my surgeons and being like, I don't know, man, I know you guys are doing your best, but this isn't working. And so eventually I requested a CT scan in which they discovered that the original fusion of the bones in my amputation had never healed because of that fall. So I was basically walking on very unhealed, unstable, painful bones, and that just wasn't gonna fly. But unfortunately, the only way to effectively fix that was to cut my leg off a second time. I very distinctly remember walking out of that surgeon's office and being like, what the fuck? Did he just say that they have to cut the same leg off again? Like, am I going through this whole process all over again? And I am not gonna lie, I did not have an easy time with that. So in August of 2019, they performed another amputation. They also call it a revision. I had some plastic surgery work done where basically they're rerouting the nerves to hopefully help with phantom pain, because I had a big problem with that, and I still do. But thank God that surgery actually went really smoothly. Recovery took an average amount of time, and by that October, I got fitted for another leg. It felt uncomfortable but not painful, which is what we were shooting for, and I started to learn how to walk. It's such a bizarrely emotional process getting a prosthetic limb, because on the one hand it's like, oh my god, mobility, hope, this is moving forward, this is what I've been waiting for. But then on the other hand, you realize how permanent this difference is, and the fact that it's never gonna be the same again, that it's always gonna be different, that it's always gonna be harder, that it's always gonna be an adjustment, and that maybe you don't like it. And I definitely had a long acceptance period of being like, I'm grateful for my prosthetic leg, but I also hate it, right? Like, I felt like a forced relationship where I'm like, well, we're stuck here together, so we're gonna figure out how to get along. But I did put a lot of work into learning to walk properly, maybe not doing as much physical therapy as I should have done, but getting very, very active. And within a couple months, I was doing rock climbing and doing ninja gym stuff, so much more. And in 2020, I was gifted my very first running blade. So I hadn't been able to run since I was 13 because of the ankle issues that I had. And by no means was it the primary motivator, but the idea of the possibility of running being on the table if I did become an amputee was really exciting to me. But running blades are really expensive. They are not. Insurance does not cover them to any extent, at least in my current knowledge. And so I was looking at like a long road to get a prosthetic, but my friend Annika happened to have an extra or a similar size, and so she gifted that to me, and my amazing prosthetist Zach built me a socket, and I started to learn to run. And oh gosh, I didn't think I'd get emotional. I told this story enough that like I'm getting a little choked up, but I still remember running across the parking lot for the first time, and just that incredible feeling of, oh my god, I did it. Like, this was worth it. Like, I can do this now for the first time in my adult life. And I ended up, shucks, goodness, where are these coming from? I ended up being able to run a 5K just a couple months ago. I trained for it a little bit. I could have done a little bit more training, but I completed it. And I really do feel like that moment of crossing the finish line, my dad was waiting for me. And he's been a runner his whole life, like a jogger, you know? And crossing the finish line, I just kind of like fell into his arms and like didn't even try to stop the tears. I feel like that was the moment that I fought years for, to really feel like, you know, I knew I'd made the right decision all along, but it's hard to hold on to that feeling when I've lost a leg, I'm now in more pain. I now have less mobility. I'm now facing more surgeries, which is the last thing I ever wanted to do, and having all of these question marks about the future. Just the fear and the uncertainty and how overwhelming all of that was. Like, that moment of crossing the 5K finish line was kind of like, I did it and it was worth it. Don't ruin your mascara, Joe. I took like 10 minutes doing my makeup this morning, which I don't normally do, and I would like it to stay on my face. Blink those tears back. I've also been able to start snowboarding. I live in Colorado. Like, that is nothing I could ever do before because of my ankle, and now I've done it a number of times and I can like actually stay up on the board, which is pretty impressive because I am not a coordinated individual. You know, previous to losing a limb, most of the stories that I heard were like, you know, battle wounds or some traumatic car accident. And the reality is that a great deal of the reasons that people lose their limbs are vascular or, you know, long-term chronic conditions like I faced. It's not always like the alligator or the shark stories. Oftentimes people have to make really hard decisions in their healthcare and what to do with their bodies. I will always be eternally grateful that I got to make that decision. There were a lot of complications and fears that came with the responsibility of like, this is my call, but that is something that has always been very empowering to me, knowing that I made that decision and I'm gonna take responsibility for whatever comes after it. 3 years into this, it has been quite a journey. It has been so much more than I ever could have expected, emotionally, mentally, physically, socially, you name it. It stretched me in ways I didn't even know that I could stretch, but it's been entirely worth it. Because now I get to do things like take my dogs for a WAOK, which I'm not gonna say loudly because she's still right here. And while doing the big things like running a 5K or snowboarding, like those are cool, it's really just the little moments of being able to walk to my car without having a lot of pain, or put my dogs on a leash and wander around the block, or go for a hike on the weekend, that I will not take for granted and am eternally grateful for. In the last video, I talked with you guys about the fact that I'm going to be needing more leg surgery on my little stump here. Now, I know that this has been coming up for a little while now. I was waiting for a specialist appointment that kind of kept getting pushed back out, and last week I finally got to meet with him to figure out, okay, what exactly we're doing and when that's going to occur. And in my previous understanding before this appointment, it was going to be a pretty non-invasive surgery. They are working on nerve stuff, which is pretty unpredictable. The meeting that I had with the surgeon, the specialist who would be doing the surgery, did not go the way that I expected it to. I find myself faced with a very difficult choice. But first, before we fully dive in, oh, my hair got caught in that and it is uncomfortable. Know what time it is? Time to thank our lovely sponsor. Now listen, if you have been on YouTube for more than a few minutes, you may have heard of this sponsor before, because they're pretty fantastic. That's right, baby, you guessed it, Raid Shadow Legends. You, like me, might be a dreamer, and have you ever dreamed, you know, I don't know, something you can fit in your pocket and play anytime that you're, say, waiting for a doctor's appointment or in between TikToks? Now you can with Raid Shadow Legends. This game allows you to explore millions of champion combinations and master countless tactics, dungeon runs, which just like speaks to my fantasy soul, campaign battles, and arena matches. There are hundreds of artifacts to equip and over 600 champions blessed with unique skills that you can build your team, develop your champions, and raid your way. As previously mentioned, I'm a fantasy nerd. I grew up thriving on the elves of Lord of the Rings. It's all I ever wanted to be. When I grew up, alas, I ended up a human, but I love elves, and the elves in Raid are amazing. They formed civilization thousands of years ago, surviving orc rampages, and the elves rebuilt as best they could. They did it pretty well now since the kingdom is in the brightest, richest, and most powerful country. And this month specifically, Raid has a non-stop schedule of special events and activities. They offer amazing rewards, limited edition artifacts, and more. And thankfully, there's never been a better time to get started. If you use the QR code on screen or the link in my description, as a new player, we'll get a free starter pack valued at almost $30, a free champion, and some awesome in-game loot. And later this month, Raid is giving everybody's favorite champion the upgrade he deserves. Death Knight is becoming a legendary champion, and if you don't know what that means, get the game started now. All you need to do to get started with this game is use the QR screen on code. Wait, I said that wrong. Use the QR code on screen, or use the link below to raid your way on mobile or PC to play this game. Let's jump back into some super confusing news. So in the process of doing an amputation, there's different things that they try to do with your nerves to alleviate nerve pain, phantom pain, things like that. And oftentimes it's effective and sometimes it's not. In my case, nerve and phantom pain has always been a big problem, but about 6 months ago, that ramped up to a whole new level where I have a spot in my leg that if I hit it the right way is insanely painful, and it also just means that I'm dealing with nerve pain in my leg the majority of the time. So as bummed as I was at the prospect of another surgery, at least there was a solution. But in speaking with my specialist, what I learned was a couple things. Number one, there's about a 50% chance that it would work period. Like best case scenario, 50% chance. Flip of a coin whether or not it's gonna fix it. Additionally, because they're working with nerves and they're kind of unpredictable, the silly geese that they are, there is a not insubstantial chance it could actually make it worse long term. On top of that, there is a guarantee that pain would be substantially increased for 3 to 6 months, and the healing time from the surgery and the lack of mobility was a lot more substantial than I thought it was gonna be. So when I was in that appointment, I was kind of like, well, of course, we have to do the next surgery. That's what I've always done. If there's a chance of it getting better, let's do it. But by the time I got out to my car and started thinking it through, I realized I do have a choice here. And as uncomfortable and painful as this can be, I am still able to walk most days. I am still able to occasionally go for a hike, though uncomfortable, on good days, or participate in different activities. It is painful, but it's also doable. And the idea that it's not only like a roll of the dice whether or not it's gonna work, but additionally that this could make it worse, I realized pretty quickly that that is not a risk I am willing to live with, which is funny, right? Because when I had my amputation in the first place, I knew that I was taking a major freaking risk. There were so many variables and possibilities of what could go wrong potentially, but I was at the end of my rope. It wasn't going to get better. It was only going to get worse unless I had it amputated, and I couldn't deal with that. I couldn't deal with that anymore. So I made this decision. I've never looked back. I don't regret it to this day. However, that was after like 14 years of pain and surgeries and worsening condition. And there's a big part of me that's like, if there's a chance it could get better, you always got to take that. But I actually realized that's a risk that I can't take right now. There has been so much that has gone on in my life in the last 6 months, so many substantial, significant changes and losses, an immense amount of grief, a lot of mental health difficulties. And as it is within my power, I don't really think I can take too much more right now. Things happen outside of our control, but when it comes to decisions I can make for my own life, I cannot stomach the idea that if I made that decision, it would make it worse. And so until this becomes unbearable, which I hope it doesn't, solid chance that that will eventually happen, but hopefully a very long time from now. Fingers crossed. Please, universe, God, whoever you are. But until that point, I'm not gonna go back under the knife. You know how sometimes you don't realize things until you say them out loud? As I'm speaking about this right now, I'm kind of realizing the impact of it. Realistically speaking, the pain I am in is not going to get better. And trying to find a way to reconcile that in my mind, to like make peace with it, to maybe not dwell on it too much, but to know what to do in the moments when that gets really heavy to deal with, is definitely a process. I have always been a big believer that hope is like the most important thing any of us can have, because without it, you just die inside, Why make it, right? Like, why try? Like, you have to have hope even if you don't know what you're hoping in, or even if it feels unfounded. I even have the word tattooed on me, for Christ's sake. Like, I'm a big believer in hope. And it's hard to know where to put that when I know it's not gonna get better. So as is true with many things, it's a process of kind of reframing it and really not thinking too far ahead, because the reality is I have no idea what's gonna happen tomorrow. All I can do is deal with this present moment. And when it comes to chronic conditions, which I have some experience in, trying to make your brain look forward and picture your life in this amount of pain, whatever you're feeling, for the next many years, or the fact that it's never gonna get better, that is a crushing thought, a crushing idea. And I find that it is the power to kind of break me really easily. So what I've started doing, instead of kind of entering into that spiral of it's never gonna get better, oh my God, there's no hope, is instead just really dealing with this present moment. Like right now, it's uncomfortable, it's not bad, it's mildly annoying, but it's not the end of the world. And so I'll work within the limitations of today. Today, it's all right. I may go for a little bit of a hike later to get some sunshine. Will I pay for that? Maybe a little bit. Tomorrow, it might be a lot worse, and I'm gonna try to respect the limitations and the boundaries that my body is putting in place by moderating the time that I'm in my prosthetic leg. As I break it on camera. Just kidding, it's way more durable than that. Not doing as much, staying off of it, things like that. But to sound very cliche, all any of us have is this exact moment. And so I'm not gonna think about the future too hard. I'm not gonna picture how terrible that could be, because the reality is, it might be just fine. It might stay exactly the same, it could get worse. I have no way of knowing. And so I'm not gonna try to be a magician, or I almost said psychopath. That's the wrong word. What's it called when someone can see into the future? Like those who have the gift of foresight. I'm not gonna try to be someone who looks into the future. I'm gonna put the word on screen when I finally look it up. Oh, hi baby. It's time for more pets. I didn't know. I didn't check my watch. I am sorry. And instead, I'm going to use my energy in whatever direction will be most productive for today. So I will not be having surgery. Also, additionally, I will be getting a couple other opinions to make sure there aren't other options out there that might have less risk I could try. There are medications I could go on, like nerve pain medications. I've been on them before, they just don't do great things for me, so that's not a direction I shall be choosing at this present time. Do I sound like a politician when I speak? It's not an option I shall be opting for at this present time, my constituents. Am I losing my mind? Have I been alone too long? Maybe I should go outside. And we'll see what happens. I'm super grateful that for the time being, I am still able to do things most days. It doesn't feel fantastic, but like I said, it's bearable. That is my little life update and why I will not be moving forward with getting cut open again. I have been through so many surgeries that I would think as time went on, I'd be like, no big deal, I'm a pro at this. Keep it coming, man, you know? Not like Ashley, but I have noticed that as time has gone on, especially in the last couple of years, I have become so averse to surgery, to the idea of surgery. I think I've had enough bad experiences with it, whether with doctors or in the recovery process or outcomes or just hospitals in general, that I have a violent emotional reaction to the idea of having more surgery. It's not gotten easier. It's somehow gotten a lot harder. So I'm gonna respect that and where my brain is right now and move on from here. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening. I do feel more powerful when I hold this like a weapon or a microphone or a very large drink, which I feel like I could use right now. But it's 10 a.m., so no luck there. A big thank you again to our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends, for sponsoring today's video. Also, this and none of my videos would be complete without me giving a heartfelt thanks to all of my patrons over on Patreon. You guys enable me to do what I'm doing here. Truly, thank you. And most importantly, come closer. You lovely human. Thank you for spending a few minutes out of your day here with me today. You could be anywhere else in the world doing anything else, and you chose to hang out with me for a few minutes. I truly appreciate that. Time is the most valuable resource any of us have, and the fact that you spend some with me means a lot to me. Thank you. I love you guys. I'm thinking of you, and I will see you in the next video. Mwah. Bye, guys. Oh, that couch was a little further back than I thought it was. Mwah. Bye. Oh, hi, big dog. Hi, Dopey. I'm really sorry, I meant to start this video, but then the dogs informed me that it was pet time, and it is my full-time job to do that instead of this, so we're just gonna have to wait until the pet quota is filled.
Discapacidad Televisión.
¡Hola, mundo!
Primer canal de televisión dedicado al colectivo de personas con discapacidad desde 2006.
Hola, soy el doctor Carlos Ferreira, abogado y locutor. Junto con Alexi Cañuca y Coti Garrone hacemos Sin Barreras, un programa que intenta ser un granito de arena para aportar a la inclusión y la accesibilidad. Desde el Centro de Discapacitados de La Matanza, CEDIMA, en San Justo, Partido de La Matanza, República Argentina, llevamos toda la información, análisis y opinión de la problemática de las personas con discapacidad. Los esperamos.
Si algún día alguien rodara una película sobre mi vida, ¿qué tipo de película crees que sería?
Una romántica con final feliz, claro.
¿Una de esas de lágrima fácil, de por la tarde?
Un musical de los que te hacen bailar.
Una peli de Almodóvar.
O tal vez una película de esas que...
La película de mi vida. Sería muchas películas, igual que la tuya.
Porque las personas con discapacidad no somos un estereotipo.
Porque somos gente como tú.
Campaña financiada por la Unión Europea Next Generation, Plan de Recuperación, Ministerio de Derechos Sociales y Agenda 2030, Gobierno de España.
¿Sabías que existen mitos en torno al Registro Nacional de la Discapacidad y a la credencial de discapacidad? Por ejemplo, 1. Tener la credencial de discapacidad vulnera los derechos de las personas con discapacidad y las estigmatiza. Falso. La credencial es un registro para conocer dónde están las personas con discapacidad y mejorar políticas públicas, velando por sus derechos y derribando prejuicios. 2. Con la credencial de discapacidad, estás inscrito en el Senadis. Falso. La credencial es un documento entregado por el Registro Civil y no por Senadis. 3. Al sumarse al Registro Nacional de la Discapacidad y obtener la credencial, las personas con discapacidad intelectual o psíquica serán declaradas interdictas. Falso. El proceso de interdicción es establecido por un tribunal de justicia. 4. Al estar en el Registro Nacional de la Discapacidad, las personas con discapacidad podrán obtener la pensión de invalidez. Falso. La pensión de invalidez es un trámite distinto a la credencial de discapacidad. 5. El porcentaje de la credencial de discapacidad condiciona la posibilidad de tener mayores beneficios sociales. Falso. El porcentaje de tu credencial no influye en la entrega de beneficios. Recuerda, la inscripción en el Registro Nacional de la Discapacidad es tu decisión. Mi decisión, mi credencial. Súmate al Registro Nacional de la Discapacidad.
Hola, soy Manuel.
No hay límites capaces de parar a una persona que lucha por su sueño. Hay pero existen miles de barreras que se levantan al paso para frenarla. Cada persona repleta está de posibilidades que le hacen machacar.
Mi deseo es poder crear una conciencia primero de la realidad de las personas con discapacidad intelectual y de todos los tipos de discapacidad. El otro es de que sean vistos como personas activas y creadoras de su propio futuro. Y lo que deseo es poder hacer conscientes a las personas de que pueden existir puestos de trabajo para este tipo de personas y para todo tipo de discapacidad y que se pueda ser productivo desde todos los puntos de vista a nivel social, personal, laboral y poder llevar esto a una materialización de una realidad mejor para todas las personas con discapacidad.
Y yo también.
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 Mi nombre es Jesús Albeiro Urbano, soy del municipio de Santa Cruz, Guachávez, vivo en una vereda que se llama El Pedregal. Soy sobreviviente de una mina antipersonal, perdí mis 2 piernas. Desde ahí quedé en una silla de ruedas. Yo pensaba que ya era una persona que de pronto no servía para nada, pero gracias a la ayuda de mi familia y mi novia, yo me superé y siempre he querido darles como a la gente un ejemplo de vida que uno en condición de discapacidad sí puede salir adelante. Yo tenía unos ahorros por ahí y me compré un carro y lo hice adaptar a la mano. Entonces yo tengo una van y ahí transporto 17 niños a una guardería. Cuando yo era niño, mi mayor sueño era estudiar y tener una profesión, pero por cosas de la vida, la pobreza, mi papá no tenía los recursos. Terminé el 5º de primaria y me retiré. Y siempre quería entrar a estudiar a una universidad. Para mí la Escuela Superior de la ESAP, ¿cómo les puedo decir? Como un regalo de Dios o no sé, ¿no? Porque esta universidad llega a este municipio, es un municipio pequeño. Esto es una oportunidad como para las personas que de pronto no tenemos los recursos para salir a una ciudad. Entonces es bueno estudiar y que tengan el conocimiento y no se desanimen por nada y que el estudio es lo más bonito que tenemos en la vida.
ESAP, Escuela Superior de Administración Pública. El servicio público es de todos. Función pública.
Hola, bienvenidos a Cambiando el Mundo de Personas con Discapacidad. Mi nombre es Raquel Quesada y seré la presentadora del mismo. En el programa hablaremos de la no discriminación, la participación e inclusión plenas y efectiva en la sociedad, a la igualdad de oportunidades de los derechos y a la accesibilidad de las personas con discapacidad, el respeto a la evolución de las facultades de los niños y las niñas con discapacidad y sus derechos a preservar su dignidad, la inclusión, la sensibilidad, la educación, la diversidad. En este programa todos los sábados celebraremos la vida de las personas con discapacidad. Que juntos podemos cambiar el mundo de personas con discapacidad.
Discapacidad Televisión.
¡Hola mundo!
Primer canal de televisión dedicado al colectivo de personas con discapacidad desde 2006.